Good Monday morning, everybody. Um, really uneventful weekend, honestly. Really nothing at all to talk about. Just really one of those weekends where kind of all the news just was boring and bland, and nothing happened at all. Being facetious, of course, going to start off Monday morning, maybe on a fun note, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, pretty rough weekend. Excuse me. And I did obviously do some streams over the weekend discussing all of the insanity that Emperor Trump brought upon the planet. And it's not over, obviously. This is something that is unfortunately going to have to be discussed probably on a daily basis at this point. But it's not the only thing happening in the world. It's not the only thing happening in the United States. There is still a lot of other stuff to talk about. So, just want to let everybody know that ahead of time. So, yes, Venezuela is definitely something that we will be covering, but it is not what we are going to focus on 100% of the time. Um, I do think to a large degree, getting too bogged down in just one story after one story after one story really does a disservice for everybody except for Donald Trump. He wants us to only talk about Venezuela. He thinks that, of course, is a feather in his cap. He thinks it is the greatest thing he's ever done. And so, yes, obviously, it's big news. It's a big deal. We're going to talk about it daily, but it's not the only thing. And the reason that Donald Trump wants us to hyper focus on what he is doing with colonizing the rest of the world is because of a guy named Jeffrey Epstein, of course. Saturday not only marked the day that Donald Trump decided to officially become an emperor and expand the American empire by deposing the government of Venezuela, it also marked the deadline for the Department of Justice to explain each and every one of the redactions that they had made to the Epstein files. And of course, as I'm sure everybody is well aware by now, they just didn't do that. They straight up didn't do it, right? They had this homework assignment, a not just even a homework assignment. This is more than that. This was part of the legislation, part of the decree from Congress. You have to deliver this information by this day. And Pam Bondi, in charge of the DOJ, I'm assuming obviously at Trump's direction, didn't do it. And a lot of people may be thinking, well, Farron, Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, they all had their hands full with overthrowing the government of Venezuela. Well, sure they did. But they also had weeks and weeks and weeks to get these redaction explanations to Congress. Okay. So it's not like Congress told them, hey, by the way, by the end of the day today, get us these things. No, they had more than enough time to get their homework together and turn it into the teacher. They chose not to do it. And they were hoping, of course, that the overthrow of Venezuela would be enough to distract everybody from the fact that it happened. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, of course, on Saturday, were not distracted at all. They released a statement saying this: "We are sure it's just a coincidence, but today is the statutory date for the DOJ to explain its redactions in the Epstein file productions. We have not forgotten, and we won't let up, regardless of the president's new unconstitutional actions." You have Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, of course, Massie a Republican, not a Democrat. They have said, we're not exactly sure what we're going to do at this point for the DOJ not complying, but of course, everything is on the table at this point. And I have faith in Khanna. I have a little bit of faith in Massie. So I do think that they're probably not going to do anything right away, to be honest. They will try to coerce, pressure the DOJ to release this additional information. the DOJ is going to stonewall as much as they can, just like they have with the initial release of the files. They missed that deadline too. We don't even have all the files yet. I mean, they announced on Christmas Eve that, oh, by the way, we just found another million documents. So it shouldn't have been, we just found a million documents. It's, hey, we just found a million documents. Here you go, guys. Have at it. We're legally supposed to give them to you. So you guys go through them. But no, they're not doing that because they're choosing to not do that because they know how bad each and every release of files, whether it's been from the DOJ, whether it's been from the Epstein estate and the Democrats on the committee, or just reporting that's come out, all of it has been bad for Trump. Like there hasn't been a single Epstein drop that's been like, oh, there's nothing bad for Trump in this. No, every single one, sometimes major, sometimes minor, but they've all had really bad news for Trump. And so overthrowing a foreign government is a pretty good distraction, especially when you're up against a hard deadline and you know that you effectively control the media at this point, all of the corporate media. So they're not going to bother reporting on it. All that's left is, the podcasters, the influencers, the YouTubers to be the ones to carry the torch because the corporate media is not going to do it. They love war. It doesn't matter if it's a right-leaning network or a left-leaning network. If it's corporate media, war, international instability is their bread and butter. That is absolutely where they make their money because the American public stays glued to their televisions. And that brings a lot of eyeballs, obviously. More eyeballs brings more ad revenue. So that's what this is all about. And again, I talked about it all over the weekend. In the lead up to the Iraq War, all of the major networks were all in on it, right? They absolutely loved it. Phil Donahue, who at the time was a host on MSNBC, lost his job because he was the only host they had that actively spoke out against the invasion of Iraq. And I'm actually reminded of an interaction that Donahue had with Bill O'Reilly on Fox News in the lead up to the war. And actually, I think it was after the capture of Saddam Hussein, but maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Anyway, O'Reilly was getting mad. He was like, so you don't think we should take out Saddam Hussein? You want him to be there and do all these horrible things? Kind of like people are saying with Maduro. And Donahue responded. He said, Bill, Saddam was a bastard. Okay? But he was our bastard. We helped create these conditions that allowed him to do what he has done for several decades. That clip, that quote, that interaction is something that from the first time I saw it, which God at this point is 20 years ago, and I still remember it like I just watched it for the first time. Because not only was it so powerful then, but it's also so relevant now. Because we're seeing the same conversations pop up. Like Maduro, you think Maduro was a good guy? You should be in charge? No. Just like Saddam Hussein, Maduro was a bastard. He was a horrible human being. None of that gives us the right to walk into another country, start bombing them. 40 civilians, by the way, is the count that died in the bombings on Friday night, Saturday morning. And just take their leader and be like, we're gonna prosecute you on charges that, by the way, stem back decades, even though you haven't been in charge of the country for decades. So for the record, by the way, Pam Bondi not only blew past the Epstein files deadline, I think she's botched this indictment against Maduro so badly by literally accusing him of doing things that he couldn't have possibly done because he wasn't in charge of the government during most of this time. So it's mind-blowing, her incompetence and stupidity. But that's what we're looking at right now. I've had a lot of super chats come through. Let me get to these real quick. First one is from Richard Andrew Swain, says, if Trump attacks Mexico, I believe that it will result in more Mexican people coming across the southern border as they can claim refugee status. I agree. I think that's a great point. Another one here from Crushed Level says, do you think MAGA will eventually be registered in an officially recognized cult like the KKK once Trump is either dead or imprisoned? I do not. I do believe that MAGA will just kind of disintegrate. It's just going to collapse in on itself. Super chats here from V-Man. First one is, Farron, what sickens me about this regime change is my homeland of Puerto Rico is being used as a staging ground for this. My people are in the danger zone while Trump and the MAGA pro-statehood government are not only cheering this on, but the statehood party of Puerto Rico, the PNP, is begging Trump to be let into the nation building in Venezuela. Can progressives in the state stop supporting their cause? Always great information. Thank you for giving that to us. And it is driving me crazy to see the celebrating. This is something, again, I addressed over the weekend, because all these people celebrating, all these MAGA fanatics in the United States, even, just the people in Venezuela, it's like, guys, we've seen this before. You can go on YouTube right now. Well, don't leave the stream to do this, but afterwards, maybe go look at the partying in the streets in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was captured and the toppling of the statues famously. That footage was shown all over the media for like a solid year. And while they were replaying that footage, what they weren't showing us was the catastrophe that happened in Iraq, the formation of ISIS itself came from the U.S. occupation. Al-Qaeda was using the U.S. occupation as a recruiting tool, and they were highly successful with it. Nothing ended well for anyone. So all these people celebrating, regardless of where you are, I beg you, go learn some history. You don't even have to look back that far. This is stuff that's available on YouTube, folks. But those who don't understand history, destined to repeat it. Super chat, from Scorpio ZA says, what blows my mind is that the U.S. thinks it even has the jurisdiction to prosecute Maduro. That's a good point. And that is something I've thought about too. It's like he's not a U.S. citizen, and the things you're actually accusing him of doing, he was doing in Venezuela. So I don't know how that's going to work, but with Pam Bondi at the helm, I don't think he's going to get convicted. I really don't. And that's crazy. Like, they could go to trial and the jury's just like, nope. So, all right, I guess you can go now. This is an interesting comment here. It says, like Marjorie Taylor Greene or not, AOC has been less vocal than her. That's true. Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I'm going to be doing a segment on this later in the week because I think her response to this is building towards something. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene right now is trying to establish herself as something she's not necessarily really that thing, but I'll explain it more in that segment that I'm going to do in a couple days, because her response to this, granted, it's been decent. I'm not going to say it's been bad. But I think she's got ulterior motives, and we will learn more about those probably in 2027, 2028, if you catch my drift. But listen, while we're on the topic of Venezuela, the Sunday morning talk shows, right? Obviously, that's going to be the big news. That's going to be the big thing, Venezuela. So on Sunday morning, of course, that's all everybody wanted to talk about. And before those shows even started on Sunday morning, JD Vance decided he needed to go ahead and do a little damage control for the administration. So JD Vance got out there on social media, puts out this super crazy long post trying to convince Americans that this was a good thing that we did because Trump knows everything. And as I've said in the past, anytime this administration's in a sticky situation, bad things are happening, bad PR, bad whatever, they send out JD Vance to try to smooth things over, and it never works. I don't know why they keep going back to him. He's really bad at this. But here's what he put on social media. You see a lot of claims that Venezuela has nothing to do with drugs because most of the fentanyl comes from elsewhere. I want to address this. First off, fentanyl isn't the only drug in the world, and there is still fentanyl coming from Venezuela, or at least there was. Second, cocaine, which is the main drug trafficked out of Venezuela, is a profit center for all of the Latin American cartels. If you cut out the money from cocaine or even reduce it, you substantially weaken the cartels overall. Also, cocaine is bad too. Well, thank you for that, because I didn't know where you were going. I thought you were about to say, like, everybody, go out and party. But I'm glad you clarified that cocaine is bad. A lot of us were kind of on the fence, I guess, didn't know which way to go on the issue of cocaine. But it's good to know. Thank you, JD Vance, for clearing that up for us. Third, yes, a lot of fentanyl is coming out of Mexico. That continues to be a focus of our policy in Mexico. It is a reason why President Trump shut the border on day one. Fourth, I see a lot of criticism about oil. About 20 years ago, Venezuela expropriated American oil property and until recently used that stolen property to get rich and fund their narco-terrorist activities. I understand the anxiety over the use of military force, but are we just supposed to allow a communist to steal our stuff in our hemisphere and do nothing? Steal our stuff in our hemisphere. You mean their country? Is that what you mean, JD? Is that what you're talking about? Their country? Yeah, we had our oil company. Chevron has been there for 103 years. And yeah, we had our oil fields that were theirs. Okay. And we had an agreement with the government at the time. As you know, governments change, leadership changes, things change, and they can change the deal as new people come in. And they said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. It's their country. It would almost be like, imagine this. Imagine there's like a foreign-owned social media company. And they're operating in the United States, right? But they're not based in the United States, okay? Say they're based in China. And the United States government one day, after letting the company run for years in America, finally they say, you know what? Nope, you can't run in America. You have to sell to us. If you don't let us buy your company, you can't operate here in the United States. Does this sound a little familiar to everybody? That's what happened with TikTok. Foreign company operating in the United States and elsewhere, much like Chevron, based in the United States, operating in Venezuela, until one day the government says, no, you can't do that anymore. Wow. Kind of shocked I hadn't had that thought earlier, but yeah, that's the same thing, JD. Telling a foreign company working in your country that you control, you can't do this anymore. There you go. Not to mention the whole fentanyl thing. He's like, fentanyl comes from there regardless of what anybody says. Regardless of what your own administration says, JD. Because just a couple months ago, the Drug Enforcement Administration, under the Trump administration, released a report saying Venezuela plays virtually no role in the production or trafficking of fentanyl. Oops. So either JD Vance is lying to justify these actions, or the DEA was lying when they put out this report, even though they had nothing to gain from lying. I'm going to go with the DEA on this one and assume that JD Vance, as per usual, as everybody else in this administration does, is just lying. All right, a lot of super chats came through here, so let me try to get to these real quick. This one is from Sandra Verlinden. Says, people in the U.S. want the EU to step in and call us selfless because we don't. But we need our recourses to defend Greenland against the U.S. And yes, Donald Trump, of course, told Michael Schur of The Atlantic this weekend that Greenland is basically next. V-Man again says, fair no lie, I had a right-winger argue that Japan post-World War II was an example of a successful regime change, a nation where we left the emperor as the head of state and only arrested a few government officials. Again, those who don't know history think they know the most about history. It's absolutely Dunning-Kruger effect. Gus Stewart says Trump wants to be just like Daddy Vlad, and he is well on his way to doing that. Skeet Sayre says, what you are saying is total BS. Venezuela is too far away from the U.S. to have a large sea-based drug operation. What you are saying is total BS. I'm not sure what I was saying, or if you're saying what JD Vance was saying is total BS. Anyway, sounds like we're on the same page. I'm just not quite comprehending what the comment is here. Super chat from Chris Moore says, by the logic of covertly kidnapping world leaders without consequences, should The Hague order an extradition warrant for NATO to snatch Netanyahu and his cabinet? Didn't see that one coming, did you, Trump? Not only that, but we could also, The Hague, not we, we're not part of it. The Hague could also come and extradite, just overnight kidnap Pete Hegseth for the strikes on the boats and the killing of the survivors. Super chat here says the oil thing claiming it's ours and we are taking it back, yet it's another country is ridiculous. Yeah, that really does get me with some of these people trying to justify it. Like, well, it was our oil. No, that is Venezuela. We may have had contracts. We may have had agreements. We may have had whatever letting us do it. But at any point, because it's a different country and we do not have jurisdiction there, they can be taken away. And they were. And yeah, sucks, right? Everybody hates it. Or at least the oil companies do. But that's no grounds for going in and overthrowing a government because they took their ball and went home. A super chat here says, every other country should just kick out U.S. military from their nations as they're just an occupying force as things stand right now. Remember, God, I always struggle pronouncing that. Curacao is 80 kilometers from Venezuela, and its tourism is now at risk because of taco. They could, and they should. Unfortunately, the U.S. spends a lot of money in these countries, and that money buys us a lot of access to their land, to everything else. And so they don't want to cut that off. So they let us basically be these police. Not to mention, I do think, especially with Trump in charge, they're also terrified of what he may do to their countries if they kick the U.S. military out. Although, again, I think they should. Moving on. We got to get away from Venezuela. Early Monday morning, right? Late Sunday night into early Monday morning, in the span of 1 hour, our demented, absolutely unhinged president of the United States put out 89 posts on Truth Social. 60 minutes, 89 posts on Truth Social. That is roughly 1.5 posts every minute is what Donald Trump did in the early morning hours. I'm talking like, midnight to 1 a.m. on Truth Social. He's out there posting like a angsty preteen, and yet he's the guy that we're supposed to trust can not only run the U.S., but also run Venezuela while running the U.S. This man is absolutely just certifiable, I think. This is not normal behavior. This is not something that a well-balanced, fully mentally functioning person does. This is something a disturbed person might do. This is something that somebody with serious psychological problems would do. And this is what our president of the United States does. And as per usual, it's not like it was 89 posts in 1 hour on one topic and he just tried to get it all out. It was a shotgun blast of random stream of consciousness BS from the man who 24 hours earlier had overthrown a foreign government. Let me read you this. Posts made by the president touched on immigration in the U.S., Venezuela, and one denounced the thieving government, saying, quote, tell me again, why do we pay tax money to a broken, lying, thieving government? You tell me, buddy, aren't aren't you in charge of that lying, thieving government? The broken, lying, thieving government? Sorry, didn't want to leave out one of your own adjectives there to describe your government. Okay. Are you telling us we shouldn't pay taxes to you guys? I'm not encouraging people to not pay taxes. You can go to jail for that unless you're Trump. But that's interesting. He also praised Elon Musk and said Elon Musk is reportedly going all in funding Republicans to help President Trump take back full control in the November midterms. Take back full control. Take back full control. When your party controls every single branch of government, how can you take back something you already control 100%? So not only are you clearly mentally unstable, you're also dumb as a box of rocks. Trump reposted a comment from Mila Joy, which reads, Ilhan Omar, money laundering, racketeering, bribery, kickbacks, conspiracy, campaign finance abuse, defrauding investors and employees, not to mention immigration fraud for marrying her brother. Lock her up, then boot her out. So he's once again spreading conspiracy theories about Representative Omar. Just absolutely repeatedly debunked conspiracy theories. So he's got the racism in there. He's got the xenophobia in there. He's got the Elon's going to save us again in there. By the way, Elon Musk, last polls that came out, granted it was months ago, he is literally the most hated person on planet Earth. He is the least popular human being on Earth. Earth, not in the United States. Not just in North America, Earth. So if you think that Elon Musk swooping in with all of his money is somehow going to save Republicans in 2026, need I remind you what happened in 2025 when Elon Musk was trying to do the same thing, buying Supreme Court seats in Wisconsin, buying races for other Republicans? They literally lost every single one of those. Every single one of them. And at the time, Republican strategists said that Elon Musk's involvement likely cost us these races. So I'm all for Elon jumping in and getting out there and giving Republicans money because it hasn't worked out super well for him in the last 12 months. Let me get to some super chats here. Let me make sure I don't miss any. First one here says, not even a week into 2026 and already my brain is back to looping the words Magneto was right over and over. For those of you who are not familiar on the X-Men lore, look it up because it's a great franchise. I love the X-Men. It's my favorite part of Marvel. So yes, thank you. Juan Peralta says, after Venezuela attack, U.S. government at higher risk of attack. Yeah, and that is honestly what always happens with this stuff. You know, we go out there, we do these things. Again, I'll use Iraq as an example because it's such a great example for it. After we did that, the terrorist attacks on U.S. troops, overseas, of course, increased dramatically. The number of people with Al-Qaeda increased dramatically. ISIS formed as a result of that. So yes, we do see that when these things happen. Obviously, it's a little soon after Venezuela to say it has happened, but the chances of it happening are astronomical now. Ronan Aquila says, Trump must be terrified enough of the truth and the files to be willing to attack an entire country just to burn it down with it. Ancient Rome is repeating itself again. Excellent point. I love that. Now we know exactly how society was under the Nazis, says Skeet Sayer. And we also see how some people cheer it on. You know, I think that's a good point too, is how could this have ever happened? Look around. You see the people cheering? Those are the same people that would have been, knocking on the door of the SS saying, hey, I think my neighbor's hiding some Jewish people in the attic. Same ones. Skeets here also says, with the Jack Smith testimony and the first things Musk got rid of was to keep both of them from going to jail. Yeah, I mean, if Elon Musk hadn't really stepped in and kind of saved Donald Trump at the 2024 election, which he thought he could repeat that magic last year and he didn't, Trump would have more than likely, definitely would have been convicted, possibly in jail. Can Congress just freeze the executive's budget? To a degree, yes. And in fact, freezing the budget is something that they have talked about doing with Pam Bondi and Pete Hegseth, by the way, for not doing what she's supposed to do with the Epstein files. So how that would work is basically, and again, I mentioned this recently, but they've talked about doing it with Hegseth, basically freezing his travel budget so that he can't go anywhere. And by anywhere, I mean literally anywhere. He would have to drive his own car if he even wants to go back to New York, where I think he still has a place to live. He can't fly. He can't buy anything. He can't do expenses. He can't hire people. He can't pay his staff. And they could do that to Pam Bondi. And honest to God, I wish they would. Bernard Taylor says, good morning, Farron. Keep up the great work. Sincerely, Bernard Taylor, Democratic candidate for Florida Congressional District 21 to unseat Brian Mast. Awesome. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck in that race. Stay present on the channel. Let's help spread the word for you. Really appreciate that. Listen, I think that's about all the time we have for today. We covered quite a bit of ground. Thank you all so much for all of the comments. I know I didn't kind of go through as many as I typically do, but it is a Monday morning, and I had a lot of stories I wanted to get out today. First and foremost, if you're not already subscribed, please do so. Secondly, share all the content, right? We got videos that go up before the live stream each day. We've got plenty of videos that come up in the day after the live stream. So yes, please, please, please make sure you're sharing this. Let's spread the word. Let's get everything out there. And otherwise, you want to follow me across social media at Farron Balanced. Just like the name says on the channel, you can find me Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads, and of course, Blue Sky. So thank you all so much. I will see you again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central Time, with a lot more insanity to talk about. So thank you all.